how AI is affecting the world of ERP, Rimini Street wins multiple industry awards, and Microsoft D365, is it worth it? That's what we're going to talk about here today in episode 258 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 258. My name is Eric Kimberling, the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, an independent tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. And joining me, as always, is our co-host, Darian Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me again.
Glad to have you. Glad to have the audience here today. Glad to have the guests, the various guests we're going to have on the show today. But before we do, just a couple quick things. First of all, this is the Tech Agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital strategy, people, process, and technology. So anything related to transformation and change, that's what we talk about here in this show. The show is a weekly podcast. Every Wednesday, we release new episodes. You can find all the past episodes and keep up with new ones by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com, and you can also subscribe on your favorite platform of choice to listen or watch this podcast. The podcast is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting Group, which is the independent tech agnostic consulting firm that I work for, and it's produced by Major Tom Production. So if you'd like to learn how to collaborate with us on this podcast or other content that we produce, you can contact us at Major Tom Productions. You can see the information below for the contact info. So today's discussion should be a good one. We're going to, first of all, get into some social media questions that we've received. We will then get into some newsworthy topics, in particular, OpenAI and ServiceNow, how they've recently struck a new deal. We'll talk about how Rimini Street has won multiple industry awards in recent months. And then later, we're going to have a panel discussion. We're going to have five panelists on the podcast, all from different software vendors, talking about ERP and the power of AI and how ERP and AI are coming together in the world of software product development, but more importantly, in the world of customer usage and actual business value. That's what we're going to try and get to the bottom of here in that panel discussion. And then finally, later in the show, we'll talk about Microsoft D365, whether or not it's worth it, whether or not it's a software that might be a good fit for you. We'll do our own independent analysis of that software later in the episode. But before we get to all that, Darian, you've gotten some recent social media questions for us to discuss here today.
Yeah, we have some good questions this week. The first one is, which AI tool is best for ERP accounting software to use and integrate?
I don't know that there is a best AI software for accounting software. I'd say that all the major accounting and financial and ERP systems that are out there right now, they are all in varying degrees investing heavily in artificial intelligence. So I think it's a matter of, first of all, determining, what AI capabilities are you looking for within your ERP system? And then secondly, considering what about third-party AI tools that might allow us to not only get the financial information we need or provide AI capabilities on the financial information, but perhaps other parts of our business as well. And so if you're looking just from a finance perspective, you might come up with one answer. But if you're looking at what AI platform could help us more broadly, including but not limited to AI, or including but not limited to finance and accounting, then that might give us a different answer. It might give us some third-party options that could be considered as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this next question is kind of interesting. They said it's a very simple question, so I want to get your take on this. It says, assuming a company has zero knowledge or expertise on digital transformation projects, how many players should be involved from phase 0 to the end, and who should they be?
Oh, that's a good question. And I would beg to differ that that's a simple question. That's a pretty complicated one, but it's a good one. So the question around how to staff a project internally, I assume is what they're talking about. How to build your team, or what kind of internal resources do you need supporting the project? I'd say, there's really three tiers of resources that you need on these projects, starting in phase 0/planning all the way through and after implementation. And those roles are going to start with the executive steering committee. So you need that executive team who's going to help resolve escalated decision points or escalated issues to that executive level. And you also need that executive team to be the ones to help drive the vision and help make decisions around what you want to be when you grow up as an organization and all that kind of stuff. Because these ERP projects do a lot more than just introduce new technologies. They typically introduce new operational models, new ways of operating, different business processes, and you need your executive team to be on board with that, because what you don't want to do is implement technology that is a surprise to executives in terms of how the business is run. And so the executive steering committee is the first layer that needs to be involved heavily throughout the entire life cycle of the project. Second layer would be the core project team. And generally you're going to have, 5 to 8 people maybe that are part of your core team. We have some clients where they're a bit bigger. You might have 12 to 15. It's really a balancing act, because on one hand, the more people you get involved in the day-to-day aspects of the project, the more ownership and buy-in and complete information you're going to have along the way. But that slows things down. The bigger your core team, the more inevitably it's just going to take you longer to make decisions. May not be a bad thing. It may be okay. It may be that you want to take that deliberate time to build the buy-in and ownership. But you just need to make sure your project plan reflects that. And that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But core project team would be that second tier, 5 to 8 people on average for most of our clients at like a mid-sized company. And then the third tier would be the subject matter experts, call it the super users, super subject matter experts, people that are going to help train the front lines. And this is really your connection. These are the people that connect the core team to the front lines and the mass employees. So these are people that may not be involved every day throughout the project, but they are going to be involved consistently at certain points. So they're going to be involved in requirements validation for their different parts of the business. They're going to be part of user acceptance testing, the training the end users as well. Typically you want your subject matter experts to be doing that. So those are the three major tiers: executive sponsor or executive steering committee, core project team, and subject matter experts. The numbers vary. The more people you involve, the better from a buy-in perspective, but the more people you involve, the more it's going to slow things down. It's just going to take you longer to get through the project.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you made that simple question, I guess, simple in a way, but I'm
more
sure
complicated.
there's a lot more to it. Yeah. But yeah, great questions today. But I want to get into our first newsworthy article. And I know this is a company that we've talked about a decent amount on here as a third-party option. And this is how this article talks about how Rimini Street won multiple industry awards. So Rimini Street announced it received multiple industry awards recognizing its AI innovation, customer service, technical expertise, and business impact. This article presents these awards as validation of Rimini Street's role in supporting enterprise software and ERP systems without requiring customers to move to vendor-mandated upgrades. This article reports that Rimini Street is still being recognized for helping organizations extend the life of ERP systems while maintaining stability and reducing support costs. The company's approach allows customers to continue operating core enterprise systems while choosing their own timelines for modernization. This article reflects a broader enterprise technology trend in which organizations are prioritizing cost control, system stability, and flexibility over immediate ERP replacement, with third-party support playing an increasingly accepted role into long-term IT strategies. Eric, I know we've talked a lot about third-party, don't have to upgrade right away, you have options, different things like that. So I just want to ask, do industry awards signal a permanent or some sort of shift toward third-party ERP support, or is this still more in a transitional phase right now?
It's a good question. I think there's a philosophical battle happening on the ground of digital transformation. And on one side of the battle, you have the software vendors that are pushing really hard to get people to upgrade to the latest and greatest cloud technologies enabled by AI. They're trying to get customers to commit to long-term subscription contracts. And there's a lot of innovation and cool capabilities that come along with that. But On the other side of the battlefield, if you will, the philosophical battlefield, are companies like Rimini Street, companies that are saying, hey, hold on, you don't necessarily need to be the latest and greatest technology or on the latest and greatest technology to take advantage of innovation and support and potentially even AI and other more advanced capabilities. And then also on that same side of the battlefield as Rimini Street is going to be some of the platform players, people like Snowflake and Databricks and even some third-party AI solutions that are built for and intended for legacy ERP environments. So that's on the other side of the battlefield. The customer's in the middle trying to figure out what in the heck do I do? How do I navigate this these two conflicting forces, if you will? And I think you hit on a really important point when you were describing this issue, Darian, and that is you talked about stability. And I think that's what a lot of companies have to ask themselves when they do their soul searching of what the right path forward is for them is how important is innovation and technological advancement versus stability, predictability, cost effectiveness, all that stuff. Because your answer to that question to those two questions could help you determine which side of the battlefield you want to be on. And I honestly don't know. I think right now the software vendors are probably winning the battle in some ways because they are convincing a lot of organizations prematurely, in my opinion, to adapt some of these quote unquote advanced technologies, even though in many cases they're not more advanced. They just create a lot more complexity and problems for organizations. But I think right now they're winning the battle, but I think customers are starting to realize we don't have to do this. Just because a vendor is sunsetting their product and cutting off support at a certain point in the future, that is a risk, but that risk might actually be a lot smaller than the risk of undertaking a big, massive digital transformation. If it's going to be disruptive, risky, you don't have good alignment, you don't know how you're going to handle your intellectual property that you've built in your legacy system. All that stuff, as an executive, you have to think about those things because it's, in my opinion, it's a bit reckless to say, we're just going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, replace something that's working perfectly fine, and we're going to put in a brand new system that's going to cost us tens of millions of dollars and introduce a bunch of operational risk in the short term and long term. And by the way, it's going to reduce our flexibility and probably increase our costs longer term. So I think the more organizations wake up to that and the more leaders wake up to that, the more they'll realize we need to be a little bit more deliberate about making this decision of how we navigate these technological options.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super interesting. Another question to go with this, Eric, is how does third-party support change the power dynamic between ERP vendors and customers, if it does?
Well, I think third-party support does something that I think we need more of in the industry, and that is to give the power back to customers. Because the more we try to hamstring customers by getting rid of support and saying, guess what, we're going to cut off your support and we're going to limit your choices, what they're trying to do, it's a narrative designed to get you to commit to their long-term roadmap and to get you locked into their vendor ecosystem. But what Rimini Street is doing, which I think is very beneficial for customers, but it's a complete thorn in the side of software vendors because it doesn't match their narrative, is they're saying, hold on, what if we give that power back to customers to extend their lifeline, to give them support, in some cases, not just support, but also even innovation in their current legacy and environments. So what they're doing and what others like Rimini Street are doing, I think it's bigger than just a specific service offering they're providing. What they're doing is they're selling stability, they're selling predictability, and they're selling customer ownership. They're selling optionality. They're giving customers options to where they don't have to just blindly follow the vendor roadmap. So I think what they and other companies like them are doing is something that's very beneficial to customers. And I just hope that more customers, whether you hire Rimini Street or not, is not my point here. My point is I hope more customers stop and think about what can I do to maximize my long-term optionality, my long-term flexibility, my long-term stability and cost effectiveness, my long-term control. Those are the intangibles that companies like Rimini Street are selling at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more question with this, and this is kind of something I'm curious about. Are we moving toward a future where ERP stability matters more than ERP modernization speed?
It's a great question. I've actually been struggling or grappling with that thought in my head for a while because, we see so many different clients throughout the world that we work with. I mean, any given year, we work with dozens of companies, a lot of them large multinationals. And in our history, we've worked with 400 plus different companies. And there's just such a wide range of client cultures and strategies and objectives and priorities that ultimately at the end of the day, you have to look at what are you trying to be? I mean, if you truly are an organization that is trying to swing for the fences and really take a quantum leap approach to let's just completely surpass our competition and take it to a whole nother level of being a tech driven company, then it could make a lot of sense then to go down the path of cloud, AI, predictive analytics, all the industry 4.0 type stuff that's emerging right now. So that could be a good thing for those organizations. But if you're a third generation family owned business and you're chugging along, growing 5 to 10% a year, you're just, quite frankly, if you're the third generation, you're just trying not to screw up what your family built over decades. Then you might want to think, well, hold on, we're a risk adverse company. That's not a bad thing. We might be a little more risk adverse than that tech driven company that I just talked about. In those cases, then you say, well, what can we do to preserve stability, to keep our cost effectiveness, to maybe more incrementally build on what we built over the years without completely disrupting it? Because these projects, these cloud and AI projects are so disruptive. I don't think people understand how disruptive it is to the business. And vendors downplay it a lot by saying, well, it's fine because it's best practice. It's off the shelf. It's off the shelf best practices. You're getting rid of the technical debt. Now you're future proof. So everything's fine. Well, it's not fine, because even if that is true, which I'm going to argue is not true, you're not future proof. You're not necessarily 10 times better off after an implementation. But let's set that aside for a second and talk about what happens in the short term and intermediate term. What happens in the short term, especially, and even intermediate term, is you have a lot of disruption, a lot of opportunity costs. You're investing time and money in a big, massive technology project that you could be using that money somewhere else. And so you have to ask yourself, is that the right use of my resources and focus? And am I comfortable with the risk and all that stuff? And it's not an either or black and white answer too, by the way. There's a lot of gray area there. It's not all or nothing. You could be taking, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 5, in terms of your level of risk tolerance and how much you're willing to modernize or wanting to modernize right now. So I think you just have to, as long as it's aligned with what your business culture reality is and where you're headed as an organization, I think that's the most important thing. Whether or not it matches the marketing narrative and the marketing spin that you hear in the industry, that part's irrelevant.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Super interesting topic, but great for Rimini Street. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more about third party on this podcast again anytime soon. But I want to get into our next article of the day, which is about OpenAI and ServiceNow and their new deal. So they have announced a partnership to embed AI agents directly into enterprise workflows inside ServiceNow's platform. They aren't chatbots or co-pilots sitting on the side. They're task executing agents designed to resolve tickets, orchestrate workflows, trigger actions across systems, and operate with minimal human intervention. This article reports that OpenAI and ServiceNow are embedding AI agents directly into, obviously, their software, but these are really designed to execute tasks and not just workflows. So according to the article, AI agents will be able to resolve service requests, automate multi-step processes, operate within the same systems that store enterprise data. And this places AI inside the workflow system rather than an external tool. This article also indicates that this approach allows ServiceNow to sit above or alongside systems like ERP and CRM, integrating them rather than replacing them. And the key takeaway here is this kind of reflects, they say, a broader trend in enterprise software where AI capabilities are being embedded directly into core platforms to automate work. ERP systems continue to provide transactional backend functions, while platforms like ServiceNow increasingly handle orchestration and execution through AI agents. Eric, with this, are AI agents inside platforms like ServiceNow the beginning of the end for traditional ERP user interfaces?
Good question. I think it might be. I mean, I think what it does is it creates a new user interface for employees to where at some point in the future, you're going to be interfacing probably with an AI agent rather than a direct ERP system or a ServiceNow or a CRM system or whatever. You're going to be interacting with the agent. And so I think the center of gravity in the center of your tech stack is probably going to shift from ERP/databases to now the AI side of things, the agentic AI side of things, to where agentic AI becomes the center of the universe, and then all the other systems sort of feed into it. I think that's probably where we're headed. The question, though, I think, and I think this is back to the earlier thread we were talking about in this conversation early in this episode, is around where does the AI reside? Are you going to double down on AI, agentic AI, and AI capabilities from your ERP software vendor, or are you going to double down on an AI tool that perhaps is independent of your technology stack, your current technology stack, and can work interoperability wise, independently of whatever systems you might decommission or replace or keep? So I think that's the bigger question: is where is that center of gravity, or the center of the universe? Is it in a third-party AI tool, or is it going to be AI within an ERP system or a ServiceNow or one of those? And I think that's the big philosophical question that a lot of the industry is debating. And I think the more you focus on the situation where you have AI and you're using AI within a core ERP or enterprise technology, the more risk you have of being locked in to that vendor community or ecosystem, the more risk you have of losing control of your data, and the more risk you have of training AI agents that are simply going to be used by competitors that are also using that same ERP system. So I think those are just some of the strategic considerations that need to be factored in when making that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And one question I know that I feel like the whole industry is kind of asking, or just everybody in general at this point, who's accountable when an AI agent makes a bad operational decision? Is it the IT, the business, or the vendor?
I think it's first and foremost the business. It's the business users that are responsible, and that may not be what a lot of people want to hear. But your software vendor provides a tool. If the AI agent goes haywire, berserk, or has hallucinations or whatever delusions and provides faulty information, you could argue that's the vendor's fault, but chances are pretty high it's the way the AI agent was trained. It's the data it's drawing from. I'm not saying it's the vendor's creating perfect products, but usually that's more of a human problem that needs to be managed. Or let me back up. It's an AI problem, but it's only humans that can fix it. You can't really blame your vendor for it. You can't blame IT for it. You have to blame the human users that need to be the ones managing AI, rather than just assuming AI is going to do their jobs for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And another question with that is, will enterprises accept AI agents executing work, or do you think the trust lag will lag behind the capability of these agents?
I think the trust lag will lag behind the capabilities, just like any technology. Even you look at like self-driving cars. My car, I don't have a Tesla, but I have a car that does have some poor man's version of self-driving that Tesla has. And it was hard for me at first. I really like it now, but it was awkward. It was weird. It didn't feel safe, but it turns out the more I use it, the more I realize it's probably a lot safer than me driving and relying on my human distractions and things that could lead to a car wreck. So I think it's like that. And it's, this is nothing new. I mean, you could go back 10 or 20 years and look at all the different things that software vendors were introducing, and people always lag behind. They didn't trust it. They didn't trust computers. They didn't trust the robots. They didn't trust the reports. They didn't trust the data, whatever. There's always something you may not trust, partially because you just are learning and it's something new, and we all fear change to some degree. So I think it's a combination of all the above.
It's kind of like Waymos, how they're finally in Denver, but people are unsure about them. I know I had an Uber driver that was very unsure about them and very scared of them. So it's just interesting to see kind of how that develops.
In that case, it makes sense that an Uber driver would be leery, because that's not only the technology and the functionality they're worried about, but they're worried about their own job security too.
Yeah, exactly. Super interesting. But I'm excited to get into this conversation with a good panel here today.
Yeah, we're going to have a star-studded vendor panel join us here in a few moments from several different software vendors, 5 different vendors to be exact, plus technology evaluation centers. And this is in advance of or leading up to an event that Technology Evaluation Centers is hosting. It's called the Enterprise Solutions Showcase. And that is coming up in February here in the U.S. And we're going to talk more about that with TEC. It's an event that Third Stage is sponsoring as well. So we'll be collaborating with TEC on that event. And the vendors that you're going to hear from here in just a moment are going to be at that event as well. And they're going to be here talking about the power of AI within the world of ERP. So ERP meets the power of AI. So we're going to talk from the front lines of people that are in product development and leadership at some of these different software vendors to find out what's new in the world of AI. What are they working on and how are they seeing it actually affect customers in the real world? And then later in the show, after the panel discussion, we'll also talk about a more deep dive review of Microsoft D365. We do a series of independent reviews on my YouTube channel, and we're going to dive into that here today. The vendor being reviewed today is Microsoft D365. So stay tuned for all of this and more. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control. If you're leading a digital transformation or ERP initiative and you want to avoid the costly mistakes that most organizations make, that's where Third Stage Consulting comes in. We are an independent and technology advisory firm, meaning that we don't sell software, we don't take commissions from vendors. Our only job is to protect your interests and be on your side. We help executives and project teams plan, deliver, and recover digital transformations and ERP projects, reducing risk, improving adoption, and delivering real business value. If you want clarity before you commit to your digital strategy, or if something feels off track to you, feel free to reach out to us at thirdstage-consulting.com, and my team and I would be happy to help.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June. He waves been faking me out. Can't make you happier now. Sometimes all I think about is you.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 258. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting. If you'd like to learn more about how Third Stage Consulting can help your organization through your digital transformation, please feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. So we've got a great panel discussion here. I'm going to have 5 to 6 people here join me in just a moment from a number of different software vendors and from technology evaluation centers. We're going to be here talking about ERP meets the power of AI. First of all, I want to introduce Christian from Technology Evaluation Center. So Christian, tell us a little bit about yourself and about the event that you guys have coming up, which is, this is meant to be a prelude to that event.
Thanks, Eric. And I have to say, I wish we could do more of these because it's rare that we can get such an extreme panel from that can provide great insights. But we reached out to you because with your audience, we wanted to let you guys know about an event that we're going to be hosting in Austin, Texas on February 23rd to 25th. It's actually called the Enterprise Software Showcase. And what we do here is we bring in different segments from users that are looking to modernize their existing technologies or implement AI strategies. But more importantly, we have vendors and consultants such as Third Stage, vendors such as Priority Software, Infor, Sage, Oracle, NetSuite, ECI. They're all going to be there, and you're going to be able to have an opportunity to hear exactly how they're implementing and planning their AI strategy and how they can help you with those planning as well. So I've been director for alliances and advisory now for about 4 years. I've been with the organization for about 15, and I'm looking forward to contributing to this conversation if I can in any way.
Yeah, likewise. And I appreciate you being here today. And I appreciate that event you guys host every year. You've done it for a long time. We've been involved for a few years now. And if you'd like here, let me see if I can pull it up here. If you'd like to register for that, I'm going to put up a QR code here in just a moment. That'll give you access to that. So if you go, no, except it's not working. Hold on. Bear with me. we have a discount code. We'll drop it in the chat if we can't get it to pop up here. For some reason, the QR code thing's not working. But we can get you 50% off to that as well. So be sure to take advantage of that. And I am gonna try and get this up here if I can get the technical thing to work. Here as we're talking, I'll try again to get it on as we're talking. But I'll drop it in the chat as well as we get going here. In fact, I'll drop it everywhere, but on LinkedIn right now because I can't drop it to LinkedIn from here. But I'll do that in a second. So you'll see if you're watching anywhere else, you'll see a link in the chat. Use the promo code Third Stage 50, and you'll get 50% off your registration fee for that. So that'll be an exciting event. And all the vendors that you see here today are going to be involved with that event as well. And so I want to quickly introduce each of them and then just dive into it and talk about AI and ERP and how it's all come together in their worlds and in their parts of the world with their customer base and whatnot. So I'll just go around the table here on the screen. Gareth, why don't we start with you from Sage ERP?
Yeah, so I'm Gareth Guest. I'm Director Staff Architect for Sage. I cover the X3, SO, and 100 and 300 product lines within the ERP space. So been with them for about coming up to 9 months now.
Great to see you. Thank you for being here all the way from the UK. And then Tanya from Infor, tell us about yourself.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. I'm Director of Product Management for Artificial Intelligence here at Infor. And so we do all things AI enabling our cloud suites for our customers. Great.
Thank you for being here. And you were at our Stratosphere conference last year as a speaker and did a great job. So it's always good to see you speak and share your knowledge. And Craig, you too. I haven't seen you in a few months, but what is your situation at Oracle? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Happy New Year, everyone. Craig Sullivan. I'm a group vice president here at Oracle NetSuite. I lead our target market product strategy organization. So that's a combination of industries as well as the international markets, so countries. I've been here for approaching 26 years, actually. So a long journey with the NetSuite team.
Perfect. And then Paul from ECI, tell us about yourself.
Yes, Paul Farrell, Senior Vice President of our Product Management for ECI. We're a product-focused ERP company providing solutions across a range of product industries. I'm particularly focused around our manufacturing industries and very glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. And then last but not least, Evgenya from Priority Software.
So hello, I'm Evgenya Kontorovich from Priority Software. I'm leading the Priority ERP product management group and specifically focused on AI. I've been doing AI for over 10 years, so I'm happily doing it in Priority now and happy to be here.
Great. Thank you for being here again, as always. And Christian was kind enough to post a QR code just to the left of his head there. There's where he's pointing. You can scan that QR code and you'll get that 50% discount. He's clearly a lot more technically competent than I am. So thank you for putting the QR code up there for us to get that registration code. So 50% off if you scan that, by the way, as we're listening here today. So I want to say hello to some audience members who've chimed in with the way they're joining from today. Jamie joining from Phoenix. Charlotte joining from Dallas, Texas. Craig joining from Johannesburg, South Africa. I appreciate you being here today. Got a lot of others joining. JB says hello. Darian says hello. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate you joining. And again, if you have questions along the way, please drop them in the chat. I've got a few questions to get us started, but really love to hear what the audience's thoughts are. So, I guess maybe if you don't mind, Christian, I'll start with you on this first question, just because like Third Stage, TEC does a lot of guidance with helping clients through software evaluations and sifting through the noise and trying to figure out what's real, what's not, what's the best fit for a certain client. When you guys think about how you're evaluating ERP platforms, how is it different now with AI and everything else that's changing? How is it different now than it was even just 2 or 3 years ago?
Great question. And one thing I have to say is that since we're an impartial advisory firm, people come to us when they're actually looking to upgrade or replace their existing ERP system. So one of the first initial steps is always taking several steps back, knowing that the destination they want to head towards is more of an automated or AI technology. So for whenever we move forward along that path, it's always looking at solving business challenges and problems, being very specific in what departments and what's needed, and more importantly, the architecture and the technology that's associated to that can help them grow to that 3 or 5 year plan. We experienced this when the evolution of cloud happened 10 years ago. People were getting ready. How do we prepare for that? It's the same thing with AI. You still have to cover the basics, starting with what we're looking at in terms of the data, the technology, the integration and implementation of additional systems that allow them to speak to others. Because one thing is for sure, with all the vendors in play, they all have very well thought out strategies, but to attain that immediately has to be more of a planned approach.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And understanding that there's this future state vision that you might be aspiring to, but knowing how to pace yourself and how to incrementally get there rather than trying to bite off more than you can chew all at once, I would imagine.
Exactly. And I'm sure you see the same thing, Eric, too, as well in your line.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to hear from your perspective, Tanya, just because you're director of AI product management at a big software vendor. How are you guys viewing how are you viewing this with your customers in terms of, you're probably on the forefront, way ahead of where any of your customers are, because that's your job, is to think ahead and how to push and expand the capabilities of the software. But how are you bringing that back to reality to where your clients are today?
Absolutely. And so at Infor, we are industry-specific ERP company. And so we do see that there is commonalities and differences across the industries in the way how they adopt it, especially for those who are more regulated industries, for example. And so I have to say, 2 to 3 years since you asked this question, I think the reality of the things, we have been using AI for a while. Similar to Evgenya, I've been in the space for more than 10 years doing practical AI implementations. And so whether some of our customers know or they don't know, but we have been using AI, just different variations of AI. If you have scheduling, for example, capabilities, a lot of those are driven by optimization, which is one of the AI techniques. If you're looking at the forecasting piece of things, yes, you could use statistical forecasts, but also there is a machine learning powered forecast. And so I would say the shift that we have noticed over the last 2 or 3 years is more kind of, I would say, democratization of AI. Now that we could have, seamless conversation, which is powered by those large language models, but behind the scenes, there is already a lot of technology base that's been built and integrated into the cloud suite that helps our customers day in and day out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. And what do you see? So Evgenya, similar situation as a product director at Priority Software. What are some of the capabilities in ERP systems or AI capabilities in AI systems that are actually delivering business value today versus what might be more marketing hype or more future state vision on the product roadmap? I mean, what do you see do you have examples or areas where you're seeing more customers gravitate towards AI and actually see some early wins in that area?
So I think that in many cases, AI is being used so widely today, right? And going back to what Tanya said, right? There was a lot of AI before the large language models that was already giving value to customers. So I think that when we see people actually getting value from AI, right? All the different types of AI that exist, those are specifically things where they either optimize their processes, right? So they have more savings, maybe they have better demand forecast, and then they have less stockouts, less waste, etc., right? More revenue. So those things are definitely bringing value. Everything around the efficiency of people, right? Can they do more with less people? Not necessarily just to cut the cost, but specifically because it's very hard to hire people today. Okay, if you have a warehousing solution, can you get more jobs done with fewer warehouse employees and things like that? So I think that in cases where actually the use case is tangible and then tangibly translated into value, this is where people actually see ROI, right? Because then they can really measure, okay, what was our situation before we put this specific solution, and what is our situation now, right? Can we do more with less, or can we do more with the same, right? So those are the use cases where people can see real value. I think when people expect to kind of use AI as a silver bullet, then they really need to get their expectations, a check, because it's really bite-sized thing, right? You can chop off savings, you save a little bit here, you improve a little bit there. So as long as they have this reality check, I think they can take the measured steps and really see the value where it's most optimal for them, right? Instead of something very big. I think it's like Christian said, right? They have this big vision. You cannot get to the last point of it from the get-go, right? You need to have very specific steps. But I think that AI, like the classical AI, is giving a lot of value to people, even before we get to the agents and things like that, because those things are still very difficult to measure, right? And some of those automations that agents bring, they might have existed before, right? So for example, Priority has a very advanced automation capability. So if we add AI on top, how much extra gain would you get? This is something that is difficult to measure still, I think, right? I don't say that there won't be a benefit, but I think this benefit is less tangible. Whereas in other places, it's much easier to see, right? If you have 1% improvement in forecast accuracy, it's very easy to put a dollar mark to it.
Right. And then others might be more intangible as far as, making people's jobs easier or making them more productive. Yeah. There's still value to it. It's just sometimes harder to measure.
No, there is value to productivity, but it's more difficult to kind of put a number to it, right? And again, doing more with same amount of people or doing more with less people. It's also important because I've seen customers who have a lot of trouble hiring new talent, hiring new employees, right? So they essentially need to do more with less people, not because they want to save on the headcount, but because they just can't hire that headcount. So, any efficiency on the floor is very important to them, right? So this is also a benefit that it's not a saving, but it's still a very important efficiency gain.
Right. So Craig, from an Oracle NetSuite perspective, how are you seeing business value from AI, and also, if you'd like to maybe chime in on how you're seeing your customers evaluate NetSuite and other platforms they might be considering?
Yeah, it's interesting listening to the panel's comments, because we kind of see a lot of evolution in how business leaders are actually even thinking about evaluating business systems. And so, one of the things that we've seen in our prospect base and indeed in our customer base is actually the use of AI to evaluate AI. The use of ChatGPT to answer questions related to what's the best business system to help me with my inventory management challenge, or my payables issue. And so what that's led to is an even more educated, if you will, discussion, even in the first interaction with a prospect or a customer, as they're looking to evolve how they run their business and how they seek to solve business problems. So that's a very interesting phenomenon that we're working with our customers on, and having those deeper discussions right from the very beginning of our interactions. And then the other part of the question in terms of the capabilities, and I agree with Tanya and Evgenya that AI is not new. It's been around for many years in various forms, and is adding value today across many businesses with many vendors. What appears to have shifted is the bringing of AI, with the advent of the LLM technology, to the forefront of the user experience. And so again, the expectation is now that you can have this discussion, have this interaction with your business system using this technology to get those deeper insights. So it's actually becoming more of a advisor, a provider of insight in sort of more end user, more tactical workloads, if you will, versus where it's been deployed traditionally, which is at sort of the scale, sort of automation, operational levels of the business. And so it's sort of a very interesting shift that we're seeing, both in that initial interaction, where we've got a more educated, deeper understanding with those prospects, and then the expectation that same technology that they've used to educate themselves around the value propositions of these business systems will actually then serve them in achieving their business goals. And I fully agree with Christian, your comment earlier on about the taking steps backward. In essence, with all of these things, you have to start with the end in mind and know what it is that you're trying to achieve in order to best evaluate whether the system that you're looking at or systems provide those will provide the best outcomes.
Right. Then Paul, from an ECI perspective, when you see customers evaluating your product and looking at areas of business value, what are some of the things they're considering, or some of the things that you're seeing work in that regard?
No, again, thank you. I mean, I think just to sort of preamble it a bit, I've been in the ERP space before ERP was coined for over 35 years. And funnily, the very first system I worked on had embedded CRM, manufacturing, distribution, procurement, capacity planning. It had HR, it had payroll, all embedded within the one platform. Granted, it was green screen, but it was all embedded in that one platform. And still today, people are pushing the desire that they want one solution to run everything. But so this is nothing new. And during that time, I've seen the huge technology leaps from proprietary systems to open systems, which was massive, went for a tenth of the cost for 10 times the power of computing, through to relational database management systems, workflow management systems, service-oriented architectures, the pickup to the cloud and the browser-based experience, all iterations around, I think, ERP, but really sort of shining the stone more rather than really fundamentally changing what's happening. And I think we're in a real fundamental change now in what ERP is. Now, as far as the end user's concerned, they should still look at the applications they're delivering, I think not really through a technology lens, but how it's going to support them in their business, how it's going to help them grow, how it's going to help them drive value, how it's going to help them unlock potential, which is, I think, a key thing that the new modern systems will do. And so they need to look at technology and how it's delivering that, rather than the shiny penny. And I do know I was part of one of the first systems that introduced workflow into the product, and you'll be surprised every time the system couldn't do something, say, oh yes, workflow, just add a workflow for that, add a workflow for that. And all of a sudden you now have an implementation that's 20 times the length that they thought it was going to be, constructing a system where the customer thought they were buying a product to run their type of business, and now they configure it. And I think we have to be careful with AI on how it fits into, it becomes an excuse of that as well. So if I'm looking at a horizontal ERP, or you need to do inventory optimization, or this supplier's late, then AI will tell you what to do. Well, the system should be telling you what to do, and you should be buying an ERP system that's always already optimized for that type of workflow. What I truly think it is going to be differentiating, and I get back to ERP hasn't changed a lot. It's basically managing transactions. And when you get a transaction into the ERP system, it optimizes that all the way through. Takes a sales order, turns it into a job, turns it into a shipment, invoices it, gets a payment. It manages all of that. Where I think AI and the new generative AI and LLM models are really going to revolutionize ERP is how it connects to the way that people do business, which is not structured data. It's emails, it's calls, it's drawings, it's PDFs, it's all these other types of things. And they spend all that time getting that accurately into the ERP so that they can then optimize the process and the value and get it through. So we're seeing, and we are really seeing this, is that customers are using AI to take that unstructured data, turn it into structure, and then process it effectively through the operation. But there's another data source that's out there as well, which again tends to be a specialist one, which I think, again, AI is going to revolutionize, and that's the signal data source. You think of all that huge amount of data from machines, from phones, from that whole industrial IoT, again, dream that's been out there for many, many years. Generative AI, again, is part of an ERP product that's a best-in-class citizen in that ecosystem. is going to be able to allow people to take that and again drive that through and help them the way that they're executing the business. And that's why I think we're at the cusp. We're some way from it, but we're at the cusp of how AI is really going to revolutionize ERP. And I think some ways take ERP to the dream that everyone always thought it would be. But it was always, how do you get the accurate information in? How do you get the accurate information out? And how do you make sense of it? What ERP has always been very good at optimizing processes once it's got those clean transactions. And I think when people are looking at and evaluating ERP, they really need to look at ERP less of an app as an application and more as of a platform that takes complex business entities and makes sense of it. How do you take a bill of material and cost it? How do you take a bill of material and drive a works order effectively? All of those types of things. But the way that that gets accessed, the way that that interacts with the value streams, both internal and externally, is going to change massively and is truly going to sort of deliver this vision, which, you know, was right there over 35 years ago when I started. And we see people still struggling with it today. But I don't know if anyone remembers back to the first Power BI demos that Microsoft used to do. That was going to revolutionize getting data from all these different sources and managing it. How many customers still have a good customer data platform that consolidates data from every source around the organization so they know what's going on? Not many, because it's tough to do. And I think this ability to take different data types, see them together in one cohesive manner that people can make sense of, whether you be in ERP, whether you be in CRM, whether you be in engineering, I think is what AI is really going to stitch that all together effectively. So that's why I think it's truly within a revolutionary area, I think, over the next couple of years and what it's going to do.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good overview of kind of a combination of what you're seeing today, but also where you think it's headed, and you get into some really interesting stuff around structured and unstructured data. And I think a lot of organizations don't fully realize how much power is there just in that one comment, in that one statement.
Agreed.
I want to come back and get your thoughts here in just a second, Gareth. Just to give you a chance to chime in on where you see the trends headed. But first, I just want to say hello to some people in the audience that are chiming in. Williams joins from Orlando, Florida. Thanks for being here today. Patrick is joining from Poland. Thank you for being here today. Sanjay says, hello, good morning. Thank you for being here, Sanjay. And here's a question from, I'm actually, before I come back to this question, let me ask you, Gareth, let me round it out, what we were just talking about as it relates to, from your perspective at Sage ERP, how are you seeing customers evaluate ERP systems in general with AI, and where are you seeing them actually see some early wins and immediate potential business value?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, it's more about being able to trust the AI. We hear a lot about hallucinations. We hear a lot about, you know, being able to lay up LLMs and all of this technology, and we've been using it for years. And AI or ML has already been existing in machine data and integrated into back-end data systems. So it's been more data processing systems. Now, with the communication aspects and the use of the LLMs, we're getting to a situation where inference is and reasoning is kicking into those type of conversations. So people are concerned that is the core data that's coming out of the system trustworthy? Can I rely upon that data? And one of the things that we're emphasizing is you've got to be able to trust the data. So you've got to be able to prove that the data exists there. You've got to be able to build in observability so that people can actually truly understand that the data that's coming out of the system is not being manipulated by the LLM. But then where the caution needs to come in is in those conversations around, well, I now know that I don't need to go and necessarily get a consultant in to then analyze the data and augment that data from multiple systems. I can use the technology to connect to other systems, to bring in multiple views of where I am today, and then do some analysis and some reasoning behind it that gives me some insights that I might not necessarily have seen before. So we talk about trusted AI, which is really how does it engage with the data that's in the systems within your ERPs? I've spent the last 20 years implementing ERP, and I've jumped over the fence to work in delivering ERPs and building ERPs. And for my sins, I'm now leading all of the AI initiatives across the ERP space within the ERP BU. And one of the key things for me when I'm engaging with customers is, what is the accuracy of the data? Well, I can prove that. That's easy to prove. But how do I prove the value that's going to come out of the conversational aspects, and how do I improve the persona that I'm engaging with, and how do I deliver the right value to that persona as I'm going through? And they're the conversations I'm having with customers, and that's probably going to be the biggest challenge for us. Is are we pushing on the right personas in those business environments? Because it's not necessarily the executive in the organizations that are using these tools all the time. It's people in the production lines, or within warehouses, or within sales functions, and are they getting the real benefit from those from that reasoning and that output that's coming from the systems? And that's the question that I'm getting asked all the time, is where is the value really coming from in the reasoning that comes off the back of the AI that we're delivering today? Because we've been, as everybody said, I concur with everybody, we've been delivering ML for years, and streams of data. Now it's reasoning. Reasoning is different. Reasoning causes hallucinations and can drive you down different routes. But how can you build trust with your partners and your customers to deliver the right outcomes going forward with the AI?
Yeah, that's really well said. And just a reminder, if you like this topic, if you like hearing from different software vendors and want to learn more about the enterprise tech community and trends in that space, the QR code right below me, right there. Scan that code if you want to learn more about the event, right next to Christian's smiling face there. And you can learn more about the event and also get a 50% discount code. So everyone here that you're hearing from, their vendors are going to be at that event as well. We're here with a panel discussion talking about ERP and the power of AI. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
When the soul of the city was laid to rest, and the night's forgotten.
If you're about to embark on the jungle of digital transformation, check out my new book, Welcome to the Jungle. It's a book that just came out in late 2025. It's my second book, and it's a book that focuses on digital transformation failure case studies and talks about the lessons and takeaways from that. It's 300 pages packed of all the lessons and things that I've learned from having been an expert witness in lawsuits related to digital transformations, and also with our team helping clients recover some of their failed projects. I've included as many lessons that could possibly fit into one book here. You can read this book. You can order it anywhere in the world in hard copy format, which is this format here. You can get it in paperback. You can also get it electronically as well. Scan the QR code right here or go to the links below for your copy. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 258. My name is Eric Kimberling here with Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And we're here with a panel of software vendors talking about ERP meeting the power of AI. So here's a question that we have from the audience, and I'm going to start with you on this, Craig. This is from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian says, when customers say we don't have AI today, what do they usually misunderstand about AI that's already embedded in their ERP system? And I like this question because I think a lot of times we think of AI as something external that we're adding to our ERP system, or in some cases we just, either we're super enamored by it or we're freaked out by it. Regardless of what we think about AI, is it a separate thing, or is it something that's really already embedded in the ERP system? In other words, is it transparent to employees that are using the technology, or is it something that actually is its own separate animal, if you will?
Yeah, it's a really good and interesting question, and I think each vendor here and will have a different perspective on this based upon their their respective strategy. As we've heard from a number of the folks on the panel, AI is not new. We've had various of these iterations of these technologies being applied to business systems for decades, and to great effect in driving automation and in some degrees autonomy and decision making on behalf of users and at an operational scale. What that tends to mean when we hear customers say, well, we don't have AI today, or we're looking for AI, is these days more of that that chat-based interaction, that LLM type mode of user experience where you can interact with your business system. At NetSuite, not only do we have the opportunity to embed AI throughout the entirety of the stack, leveraging the Oracle infrastructure all the way down to the autonomous database within the OCI infrastructure, and leveraging all of the back-end technologies for with machine learning, etc. But we're also embedding and making that chat-based interaction through Ask Oracle part of the primary user experience of the business system. So what you're seeing, and this is happening in other systems with Microsoft Copilot and other offerings too, where whether it be embedded like NetSuite is, or whether it's being added on, that's what we're seeing our customers ask for and sort of interpret as the absence of AI is can I in essence chat with my business system? Can I get insight through natural language? And can I basically get the inference that I need in order to make the best business decisions? And then moving from there, do we have agents? Is there an opportunity to leverage the LLM technology to actually drive some of this autonomous behavior, some of this reasoning, some of this decision making to take some of the workload off of our end users? And I agree with Gareth. This isn't just about the executives. The executives make decisions, and we're working, and many business systems are providing more and more executive level insight to support and help decision making at that senior level. But what we're also seeing is the need for this technology to help people elsewhere in the organization do their jobs more efficiently, more effectively, achieve scale, without necessarily adding more humans to the processes. And that's actually a big part of the sort of the rationale behind the how do we leverage AI in our business systems is how can we make our organization be more effective, more efficient, perhaps without growing the number of people, but being able to do a better job with the people that we have.
Yeah, really well said. And I have a question for you, Gareth, and this is from Sanjay on LinkedIn. And Sanjay says, do you think AI is going to revolutionize the way ERP systems work. And I might add, if you don't mind, let me add to this question too. I'm going to build on something that that Craig just said, and that is that you talk about how AI is embedded in ERP already. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on before we get to this question. What are your thoughts on like how are your customers? When I say customers, I guess I mean the end users, not necessarily executives or leaders, but how are end users responding to AI? Do they think it's cool? Are they excited about it? Or are they sort of turned off by it just because they're so tired of hearing about it? Are they skeptical? What's the knee-jerk reaction you're getting?
I think it's varied. It really is varied around where it is, depending on how much exposure you've got, how busy you are. I think is some of this. We talk about playing with AI because the reality is you need to understand how it's going to affect your job and the role and the processes and how it's going to change the way of working. Will it revolutionize ERP? I'm not there at the moment from my perspective. I think it's going to change how you perceive ERP, how you interact with ERP, how you get data and how data is shared across ERPs going forward. And I think we're at one of these inflection points, one of these epochs where data boundaries are going to drop. And there was actually another question on here that I'm going to partially cover at the same time because I think it's there. One of the things about AI, or the latest generation of AI, where we're working right now, is it has the ability to understand the physical world. You can input data from images, from voice, from paperwork that you have lying around the office. So it's more about interpretation and using that to drive and change the way you work on a day-to-day basis. So the systems are going to provide you the capability. As vendors, we're going to give you these new tool sets that are able to interpret physical asset data and convert it into digital data that then becomes part of the ERP. But then what it's going to do is it's going to then enable you to do different things with that and use it to improve your processes and the way you work with things going forward. So where I'm engaging with people on the floor, as it were, it's more around how do we free them up to do other tasks. So that day-to-day business process that you do today, how does an agentic ERP change the direction of where you are today? So processing that end-to-end sales order, does it now free you up to be more engaged with your customer base and therefore make them feel more respected and engaged with you? So you can get on and build relationships, which you might not be able to do today because you're so stretched with a lack of manpower. So it's those type of conversations that we're having with those individuals, and it's changing that mentality. This is not going to get rid of. There are certain industries where people are going to lose out, but in the ERP space, it's going to free people up to really focus on the jobs to be done. And I think that's something that's really coming out of our environment, is focusing on those jobs to be done as a business helps you drive engagement going forward. And that's what you should be thinking about when you're purchasing ERP software now, is how do I get the jobs to be done? What are the jobs to be done? And how does it free me up to do more jobs going forward?
Right.
Can I jump in again, Eric, real quick?
Sure, please.
It's sort of just building on the topic, and it actually takes me back to something Paul said earlier on this morning about, in essence, the nature of ERP systems has been largely the same for their entire life. It's the transaction systems are. They capture in essence the meat and potatoes, the nuts and bolts of what's going on in the business and help you make sense of that. And so, I would actually suggest, that Sanjay's question is a good one, but perhaps it's more of better to sort of think about it in the context of, does AI revolutionize the way we work with ERP systems? Not necessarily revolutionizing the way that ERP systems will work. And it comes back to something that I think you touched on, Gareth, which is the willingness, in essence, and the readiness of the organization and the people within the organization to embrace the potential of these AI capabilities within these business systems to revolutionize the way that their business works, to drive towards the change that is necessary for them to be competitive, to deliver more value, more respect, as you put it, to their customers, better collaborations with their vendors, more efficiency with their teams. And so thinking about it in that context, I think is perhaps not necessarily a better, but an alternative perspective to take when thinking about how AI can help anybody with their business challenges.
Right.
And if I may add, I'm sorry, if I may add, so sorry to interrupt. So I think this is really key. How do you interact with the system? I think about the days, you're trying to find the right screen in the application. Let's say, if it's a day-to-day activity, it's one thing, but, you only, do your, reviews, or you get on maternity leave or whatever once a year, right? And so how long does it take you to really find those things? And so now if you have an assistant that helps you take to the right screen of the application, that helps you get those things done, it's really value add activity. And so when we think about it from the perspective of how do you interact and how much time it's spent, in the past, nowadays we could do those things a lot more faster and a lot more efficient. And it's not just one-way communication where those embedded experiences were just put into us to say, this is what you got to do. Now, since you have an assistant, you could actually challenge, you could have a follow-up questions, and it could actually change the whole way how we do things. And so thinking about how do we help our customers, I think it's kind of boils down to the value escalators that we would talk, in the past all the time. Well, you could give me insights of what's happening, and Jenny is wonderful at it. It does me, gives me insight this time that it will look me on the screen and try to figure this out. But then it also taken it to the next level where I leverage on other AI technology to tell me what's going to happen, to give me recommendations on the optimization and prescriptive side what to do. And I think we're getting to the point where, like, at least from product management perspective, we spend a lot of time thinking about cognitive analytics. Tell me the things that I don't know yet. But to the point of what everybody was bringing up, we have all this data that's sitting around there. And as a human beings, we have to sleep, we have to eat, but AI have access to it. And it can actually look through the things and actually point me to the right places. Have you noticed this has been happening that before you wouldn't have if you wouldn't have access to those technologies? So I think in a nutshell of how, we all were trying to converse on it. So ERP as such is a core is staying there, but the way how we interact, how it makes us more productive, how it helps us drive to the decisions faster, that's where AI is going to help.
Yeah, and of course, mirroring or ensuring that people and AI come together to do those two things, to be able to interact and take full advantage of AI, because the tool itself isn't going to do what you say without people understanding how to use it and how to put the right guardrails in place and all that good stuff.
Human in the loop for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a couple comments, and I have another question for you, Tanya, actually, here in a second. This is from the audience. But so this is a comment from Jamie, take away the keyboard, and that will be the pivotal moment. That's not too far-fetched, I don't think, to think that we may not need a keyboard, especially with that physical, I forgot which one of you were just talking about, that the physical artifacts that AI can process, not just the stuff that's on your computer. But the question I wanted to get to for you, Tanya, is, and I want to ask you this in the context of knowing what I know about Infor Velocity and the AI capabilities I know you guys are building there. And I'm curious to hear what the other vendors think on this too. But this is from Antonio on LinkedIn, and he's relating it to SAP, but it's a general question for any vendor. The best part of my experience was and still is working with SAP. One aspect of its approach is to embed AI directly into its own ecosystem rather than relying heavily on integrations with external systems. Do you think this choice will affect its future growth and the future of ERPs following the same approach? So I'm going to change this a little bit for you, Tanya, and just ask, where does AI need to be? Does AI need to be within your core ERP system and sort of limited to that? Or do you see AI as something that can sit on top of multiple systems if you're working in a best of breed sort of environment, or do you need the latest and greatest, newest technology to take advantage of AI, or could you even use your legacy systems to take advantage of it? How do we navigate that?
Yes. So I think maybe the answer is a little bit of both. And so what we have is that when we talk about Infor, we talk about cloud suites. And so a cloud suite to us is not just a core ERP, it's actually a combination of the applications that are working closer together. So it could be your ERP itself, it could be your workforce management, could be your CRM sitting on top of the HCM, the human capital intelligence sitting together. And so from the AI perspective, full integrated within my screen. So embedded experience, we have users going on the and it provides them product recommendations for upsell to take it to the next level. That's wonderful, especially in the young workforce that's joining. Sometimes they don't know the knowledge of this hundreds and thousands of SKUs that are out there. So it comes.
Oh, we're losing time.
Kind of having those solutions. Hello?
Oh, you're back.
Did I?
You're back.
Oh, I was talking all this time that I'm.
We lost you for about 10 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds there.
It was me. Yeah.
Oh, we're losing you. Oh, we totally lost her now. I really pissed her off, didn't I? I didn't think it was that hard. I didn't mean for that to be a hard question. Just kidding. But maybe I'll maybe ask you, any of you guys want to chime in on this as far as where AI needs to sit in ERP, sit outside of that?
Yeah, I'll quickly chime in first, if that's right. So from my perspective, when I'm looking at ERP now, both my own and my competitors, I'm looking for whether it's embedded or whether it sits on top to understand, how integrated with the data layer it is. Now, I'm going to inflect a little bit here because I don't want to question how each of us have implemented it, because that's down to different architectures, and that's a real challenge right now. We've got different technologies, architectures, and capabilities, and that's a real challenge to then deliver this stuff. What I think is coming out of the AI deliveries is actually a set of standards that allow really good communication, interact to interact. So from my perspective, I get to the stage where it doesn't really matter whether it's into your application or whether it's on top of your application, so long as you've got a good interconnectivity layer. And if you don't have that, then you're not going to be able to take advantage of those technology standards that are being driven by the AI technology environment. And over the next year, there are going to be some of those coming out again, updates to those standards. And they will change the way that we operate and how we work with other vendors and other platforms. The composable ERP becomes reality with agentic AI and those operability standards that are now coming out. So from my perspective, I think you can embed it if you want, but the reality is you're going to have to allow communication between different platforms and capabilities to be able to share data and manage data, and it's going to become a lot more friendly in the ERP space. Let's put it that way from my perspective.
Right. Yeah, very well said.
Tanya, I would also like to add, you want to go back to Tanya?
Yeah, Tanya, maybe finish your thought if you don't mind, and I'll come back to you, Evgenya, if that's all right.
Okay, my apologies. I don't know at which point in time you lost me. But yes, having embedded experience is extremely beneficial and helpful. At the same time, I mean, we all know that the reality of the things, a lot of our customers have data distributed across multiple systems. They should be talking to each other. And so the whole idea of having an invocation of an assistant, having conversational interface that runs behind the scenes and actually picks the right tool for the right question. I was given an example at the beginning, right? So let's say that I'm talking and I'm trying to figure out what would be the best schedule, right? It should intelligence enough with all the supervisor agents to call in the right tool and help me get the answer back. So I think with us working across, have an embedded combination and also the integration that are sourced through the same interface is going to help to those questions much faster. And it's intelligent enough behind the scenes to pick the right tool, the right agent for what we're trying to achieve.
Knowing where to find the information it needs or which system it needs to go to, that sort of thing.
Exactly. That goes back to the data and metadata, right? So it's a natural language process. And so we do need to have a good metadata around all of those things to know which tool to call when that will provide you the best answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Evgenya, you were going to say something along these lines too.
Yeah, so I to kind of continue what Tanya said, so the way I see it is that it's still an embedded story, right? So when an agent within an ERP can kind of talk to some data source outside of ERP is, to my point, it's still somewhat embedded, right? Because the ERP needs to be aware of those other systems, right? And how we make those systems essentially aware of each other is one thing. And there is a certain benefit on that because still I think when you bring in a platform like ERP with some built-in AI and maybe AI that can kind of expand its reach beyond the ERP a little bit, you can do it with minimal, investment in manpower, etc. Right? But I think that some people also have the expectation of, okay, what happens if I, bring AI that is completely disconnected, right? People still think about, okay, can I bring my own data science people? Can I bring my own models? What happens then? And then the answer to that is that the ERP needs to be easy to integrate with if those people choose to kind of bring in their own AI or bring in their own data science. There is a cost to that because I think it's much more expensive to implement. But there is also benefit, right? And some customers are finding benefit in having those systems, but then we need to be ready with all the different APIs, whether we have our, we give an MCP server that allows people to kind of interact with our ERP, whether they'll give, APIs to get the data. So I think the selection in the end that is kind of, people need to understand like what do they need, right? It's more in their hands than for us. I believe that all of us, to some extent, I'm bringing in, kind of built-in AI, right, in different levels and different forms. But then if customers choose to do their own thing, we should still be open enough to allow them to do this. And I think not to let them,
choose
one versus the other necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If I can
just I think that's what will happen over time. As this gets more commoditized, you're going to go to businesses. I already have a subscription with ChatGPT, and I'm paying X amount, and I've trained these models, and I've been doing that for 5 years. I now want to replace my financial system or my manufacturing system. I want to utilize all of that and plug that in. So I think over time, people are going to be able to want to leverage their existing investment. We see this in other areas of ERP. People, that have commerce channels, they put a huge amount of investment into commerce where they get it trained exactly the way that they want it, the way that they sell and market to their customers. When they go to ERP to get the benefits of then the business execution, they don't want to throw that away and take the ERP's commerce solution, which might be there. They want to be able to leverage the investment they've made, and they want their ERP to be a best-in-class element of that ecosystem. And that's why I said up front that I think ERP is going to evolve into a platform that supports the way that businesses want to work. But again, businesses need to focus on, manufacturing guy, value, like they always do. And where is that value, and how do you get rid of that dead cost? How do you get rid of it taking 2 weeks to produce a quote to send back to a customer 2 weeks after they send you the email for the request, with all the details that are there? By the time someone translates it, gets it in, costs it, how do you streamline that? And I think this is an area, and I think everyone said it in different words, that AI is absolutely going to revolutionize. It already is. We're seeing it right now with customers today, where they take drawings in, they just go and drag it into their ERP, and it generates a bill of materials, where before that would have taken days. With engineers, expensive people, and other things, where they want to leave those expensive people and other engineers to work on the real difficult things, but those rote things that you do 10 estimates a day of, you want to happen automatically. And I think that's what everyone needs to do, is concentrate on where the business value, concentrate on where the value is. And I think many people will be surprised at how AI is going to revolutionize some of these areas. And it is happening today in a lot of businesses that are out there. But getting back to that first point is, I think this is going to be commoditized as it moves on. People will invest in it, and they want to leverage that in their ERP decisions moving forward. And if you've got a closed ERP where everything's embedded and it's unchangeable, then you're not going to be able to help them leverage the investments they've already made.
Yeah, really well said. And you're actually leading into my lightning round closing question I have for everyone, Paul, and that is, I'll start with you, Gareth, and I'll finish with you, Christian. I'll let you have the last word here. But Gareth, where do you see AI in ERP in, say, 3 to 5 years from now? What's going to look different that we're not seeing yet so far here today?
Well, my personal opinion is that I think we'll stop talking about AI, because AI will just be naturally in the systems.
I think a lot of us will be glad to when that day comes, so we can stop.
Yeah,
talking.
we'll be tied
really
into
looking for that.
their product name to something AI.
Yeah, so I think that's the key thing for me. But where I'm most interested is, and I was talking to somebody earlier today about this. It's a bit like the Apollo programs. When the Apollo program started, they went with the aim of going to the moon, but actually we had things like microwaves, miniaturization, and a whole bunch of different technologies spun off the back of it because of it. There are some fantastic patents coming out right now to miniaturize technology and reapply and reuse technologies and do different things. So it's not just AI now, it's then what can we do with IoT and other capabilities to help make things more efficient going forward off the back of this. So how do we change software engineering? How do we change the delivery of the ERP? And then the knock-on capabilities that might make you even more efficient. And that's what I'm interested in as we go into the next 3 to 5 years. So yes, we will build agentic and all those capabilities into products, but how does data sharing, how does standardization, how does that all come together in a future vision? And I think that's where I'm most interested.
Yeah, very interesting. How about you, Craig? Where do you see AI headed here in the next 3 to 5 years within the world of ERP?
I completely agree with Gareth. First point, it'll just become part of the system, not necessarily part of the naming of these solutions. Directionally, I think what you'll see is the increased focus on context, on ensuring that within an industry, within a specific business, within a function, and within a role within the business, that the AI will become more adept at helping at all those various levels, because it understands not just the business, but has the spatial awareness of where that business sits in the universe, so to speak, and where the user's role sits within the business within that universe. So as well as with these roles evolving to benefit from AI, the systems will evolve and the AI tools will evolve to really focus on solving the specific needs of those users in a way that is extremely organic and extremely natural to helping them achieve their particular job goals and business goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Tanya, how about you from Infor perspective? Where do you see AI headed here in the next 3 to 5 years?
I agree with the rest of the team who said that it's going to become a lot more integrated, and we're going to start talking about it more from the system perspective. I do see it's been a lot more personalized. So as you start your day, Eric, or whoever starts their day, right, you'll have a set of recommendations and things to look into from the perspective of the context. And I think we will start generating a lot more things on the fly, including, those screens and the dashboards, the things that were before part of the standard content. At least that's where we headed a lot of our investment, to have this more personalized experience and have a lot more adaptive UX in the front.
Yeah. And how about you, Evgenya?
So I think everyone just said the things that I wanted to mention. Because really people do expect, going to what Tanya said, right? People expect that things become kind of conversational. The whole experience changes to the point of, adaptive dashboards and things like that. I also believe that kind of the day-to-day management and the maintenance of ERP systems should become easier as well. I mean, if we have people who write software, right, with things like Claude Code, we should expect, ERP managers, ERP administrators to be able to do certain things with the, conversational interface easier, right? And if they need to write customizations, if they need to create dashboards, if they need to do all those things, essentially to be able to do them conversationally. So I think that kind of configurational aspect is going to be also kind of move towards something that is powered by the language models. And I also believe that we will have a lot more reasoning, right? So not just like the simple types of recommendations that are possible today, but maybe something that is more reasoning kind of like, right? So it's not like that I found a certain problem in your supply chain, but then to be really able to find the reasons for it and to be able to check all the different scenarios. I think this exists in some kind of POC level today in different places, but I haven't seen a cohesive solution that gives it. And I think customers need this as well. And the third part is the connectivity of data. The data connectivity is still a big issue, right? So people have a lot of platforms, they have the ERP, they have some data warehouse, they have other things. It's still a lot of headache to connect everything together. People spend so much time and money to kind of map and connect different data sources together. I really hope that AI will help us do this better and faster, and to kind of for systems for this metadata, right? And Tanya was speaking about metadata. For this metadata, essentially to become something that systems can communicate one with another, easier. Again, without having to have an integration project of 3, 4, 5, 6 months when people need to do a lot of that manual integration kind of work. So I hope AI can help us there too.
Yeah. And then last but not least, Christian, where do you see AI headed in the next 3 to 5 years from a customer perspective?
Well, from a customer perspective, I think most of them, I'd have to say about 60 to 70% of organizations will need to have some form of AI in place only to remain competitive. Just like we talked about agility, flexibility, they need to be able to get this information. But like what Evgenya was saying is, and even what Gareth was saying, is that the biggest issue that we've seen, and hopefully it will be resolved or some sort of solution will present itself, many different data sources. Someone is on a specific ERP system and doesn't want to talk to another. People are looking into composable, flexible systems these days. We're seeing the challenges now. Even when we look at our functional requirements, we've added, can this be done? And we still have not seen solutions yet. There are workarounds and APIs and connectivity issues, but 3 to 5 years, hopefully all of us will be able to play nice together and open up our systems and the data and make things work. If not, people are going to be locked down to specific systems and forced to whatever that vendor offers.
Yeah, that was a whole nother can of worms I didn't have time to get to, is the whole vendor lock thing. But that's it's a great point though, because it gets into all the things that we won't be able to get into today around who owns the data, how much ownership do you have as a business owner if that data is being used to train other AI models that might benefit your competitors that are using the same technology. So that opens up a whole nother intellectual property / vendor lock / data ownership sort of discussion that we can't get to here today, but perhaps as a follow-up we could do that. So really good stuff. So tell us one last time, Christian, a little bit about the enterprise solution showcase coming up, why people should attend, what to expect, all that stuff.
Yeah, like unlike this live stream being conversational, what we'll be able to address at the event itself, you'll actually be able to see the functional capabilities of solutions. All the vendors that are here on the panel will be providing demonstrations of their solution and how they've embedded AI or some high-level processes, whether it's automation or ML, and how it applies to your business. But most importantly, the consultants, ourselves that will be there, will be able to answer some questions. We'll have real conversations with not just the vendors and see real life scenarios, but you'll be able to have one-on-one conversations to understand how things can impact your business, the steps to take forward, both from a consultancy, a vendor perspective, and even from other end users that are going through the same challenges and experiences you are.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say, unlike this panel discussion, we're not going to all get along like we are right now, because we'll all be in the same room and we're just going to brawl. But that's not what you said. Although you never know. You have to attend to find out if we're all going to get along in the same room.
Exactly.
But the QR code right behind you there again, do you mind pointing at it again just so everyone sees it?
There it is.
Scan that there. You can learn more about the event and also use that to get 50% off. If you end up going later and you don't use that exact link, just use the code third stage 50. And you'll get 50% off your registration for that. So we'll look forward to seeing all of you there, and hope to see many people listening to the show. Hope to see them at the event as well. All right, fun conversation. Thank you all for joining. That was a really good conversation and good diverse perspectives from a number of different software vendors there. We've got a lot more to cover. We're going to get into a debrief of that panel discussion we just had. And we're also going to get into a deep dive of Microsoft D365 and give you some overviews of the pros and cons of that solution if you're considering it for your digital transformation. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground.
I'm Greg Benton. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer with Third Stage Consulting. And if you are embarking on your digital transformation journey or in the middle of that journey in 2026, you're going to want to see our digital transformation report. This latest edition really dives into a lot of the key trends that we're seeing in the marketplace and the ecosystem right now. It also highlights a number of the things that are happening with AI being an important component and integral part of the ERP systems that are leading the way right now. Also, the shift toward composable and best-of-breed cloud solutions is really accelerating the decline of monolithic ERP replacement. The opportunity to download the report is found at thirdstage-consulting.com. And you'll also find other tools that will help you in the initiatives and the business planning that you're doing for 2026. Don't leave phase zero without it. Reach out today.
I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 258. My name is Eric Kimberling. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And Darian, we just had this panel discussion with a bunch of different software vendors talking about ERP and AI, everyone's favorite topic. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation?
Yeah, I always love when we have a panel on as the guest spot because I feel like we hear so many different perspectives when that happens. And I think today we heard that as well, and everybody's different things they have going on. But I do have some follow-up questions from you, Eric, that I feel like we didn't get to hear much from during that conversation. So I want to get your take on it. The first one being with embedded AI and versus visible AI. So should the most valuable AI be visible to users or explicitly surface through chat, co-pilots, and agents? And in your opinion, I mean, obviously it may differ per vendor, but what do you think?
Well, I think it would start with employee or user prompted stuff that is the focus. But I think over time, the beauty of AI is it can learn and anticipate what you might need. So, if you have 1,000 employees that are using a certain AI agent, the agentic AI can learn from those 1,000 employees and what they typically ask for, potentially what some people are asking for, but others aren't. And so it can be a good way to cross-pollinate knowledge and information and ways of thinking, I would imagine, because it's learning all along from all these different people using it. So I think it's a combination of both, but I think, it gets stronger, just like, if any of you use ChatGPT or you have an AI tool that you use either at work or at home or both, you learn over time, or you see over time how that AI tool starts to learn you, and they know a lot about you. And they know and anticipate better over time what it is you might want to talk about or think about or ask or whatever. And I think that's the power of AI, is it's constantly learning and it doesn't forget. So I think, that cross-pollination can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the human side of things, what does human in the loop actually look like on the day-to-day for ERP usage?
Well, it's, you think about, if you think of AI as this super powerful machine that could go, I could set it free right now. It could go do a bunch of things. It could destroy a bunch of crap. It could help some things along. You could do a lot of different things if I don't give it any parameters. So AI is kind of like that. You've got to direct it and say, this is what I need from it. These are the parameters I want. I don't want you doing these things. When it does try to do those things, I do want you focusing on this. And then as it gets crazy and starts to suggest things or, try to go different directions, it's up to you, the human, to determine whether or not that's the right answer, whether that's appropriate. So I think, you just have to, you can't expect that AI is going to do all this stuff for us, because there's so many things that change quickly that only humans are going to understand. And they've got to be the ones to direct AI to stay within those parameters.
Yeah, absolutely. And last question about AI. What signals tell you an organization is not ready for AI, even if the leadership team wants it?
A few different signals would suggest to me that a organization is not ready for AI. One would be you don't have a clear vision of what it is you want out of AI. If it's just, we want to be AI driven because our investors and our board are demanding it, that's not a good enough reason. You need much more clarity behind that of what exactly you want to accomplish with AI. The other signal that you may not be ready for AI would be if your data is a mess, if you know that you've got dirty data and you've got data corruption issues, that could be a problem. And then a third would be if you don't have clarity around what your data governance is going to look like longer term. Because if you clean up your data, put it in AI, and then your people are going back to their old ways of touching the data in a way that makes it less relevant over time, that's going to affect your AI outputs. So you need to make sure that you not only have clean data to start with, but that you have data governance in place to make sure you tighten up and control that data. And then a fourth thing I would say that's really important that I rarely hear leaders or even consultants or tech vendors talk about or think about, and that is, what's the job design of the organization? Have we thought about what we want people's roles to be, how they will use AI? And that clarity is really important, because not only for you as a leader, so you know what's going on in your organization, but also for your employees, so they understand what's expected of them. Because in the absence of that clarity, they're going to be panicked and fearful and skeptical of AI, especially if there's no clarity around how they're going to use it. If you're just throwing a tool at them, that's not going to work. So that's the other aspect of readiness. AI readiness would be making sure that you have a vision of how you want people's jobs to look and how you want them to interact with AI.
Yeah, that's some great advice for sure. And what a great conversation today between everybody on the panel.
Yeah, it was a great conversation, a lot of fun. And we do that about once a year. We'll get a full panel of different software vendors, and it's always fun to see how aligned they all are in some ways, but how they have different strategies and different thoughts and roadmaps in mind for the market. So it's always interesting, and hopefully that was helpful to the audience. So speaking of software vendors, one software vendor that was not on that panel was Microsoft Dynamics 365. And a lot of people ask, is Microsoft D365 a viable solution for us, and what are the pros and cons? So we thought we'd share you this YouTube video that I recently published on my YouTube channel. This is focused on Microsoft D365 Finance and Operations, the F&O version of D365. So there's Business Central and there's F&O. Business Central is more for the small and mid-market companies. D365 is for upper mid-market companies, maybe some larger organizations as well. And it competes more with SAP and Oracle more than it does, say, a NetSuite or a smaller scale system. So let's roll the video of this independent, tech agnostic, balanced view of the pros and cons of Microsoft, and then we'll come back and talk about it here in just a moment. Microsoft Dynamics 365 is one of the ERP systems that we're most familiar with and we help a lot of our clients implement. However, we found that D365 is not the best fit for every organization. There's a lot of strengths and weaknesses of this product, just like any software product out there. So what I wanted to do today is share with you an objective view of the pros and cons of this software based on our experience having helped so many companies throughout the world select and implement the product. Now, if you'd like to learn more about some of our experience with D365, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to discuss some of the strengths and weaknesses with you in more detail beyond this video. But you can also learn about some of our observations and objective and tech agnostic perspectives on the product. You can find that by reading our Guide to Successful Microsoft D365 Implementations. You can find that by scanning the QR code right here or go to the links below. Before I get into the pros and cons of Dynamics 365, let's just provide a general overview of what the product is. First of all, to clarify, when we talk about D365 in this video, we are talking about the finance and operations version of D365. There's two different versions of Dynamics 365. There's Business Central and Finance and Operations. Starting with Business Central, which we'll not talk about here today beyond this, but that is just to realize that Business Central was formerly known as Microsoft Navision. If you remember that product, that was what Navision evolved into, was Microsoft Business Central, which is more the small and mid-market solution for D365 customers. Finance and Operations, on the other hand, originated from Microsoft Exapta, as well as Great Plains and other Microsoft products that they merged into one single product called Microsoft D365 Finance and Operations. And this product is built for larger organizations. So companies that might be considering Oracle Fusion or maybe even SAP S/4HANA, those organizations are more likely to consider Microsoft D365 F&O, whereas D365 Business Central is typically more down market, and that competes more with like a NetSuite or perhaps other types of systems in the marketplace. And what we'll discuss in this video is that D365 has a lot of very unique strengths and some disadvantages, and it couldn't be much different than a lot of the leading ERP systems in the marketplace, which could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what it is you're looking for. So what I want to do today is talk about some of those pros and cons as it relates to D365 F&O. One of the biggest advantages of Microsoft D365 is the integration it has with some of the other Microsoft products in its ecosystem. This is a very seamless integration, and other ERP systems in the marketplace, to be clear, do integrate to some degree with the Microsoft ecosystem, but not in the same way that D365 does. For example, organizations that are using Power BI for business intelligence, or perhaps they're using Power Apps to create their own applications and their own semi-customization of technology, those solutions can be great add-ons to D365 because it allows you to extend the capabilities and change the capabilities of what the core out-of-the-box technology can do. In addition, if you're a user of Microsoft Office and SharePoint, PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, Excel, all these different Microsoft solutions that you might be using at the individual level, Microsoft D365 integrates very well with those solutions. And of course, if you're using Copilot, Microsoft owns Copilot. It also owns something called Microsoft Agent 365, which is the agentic AI offering from Microsoft. Those solutions integrate really well into D365 as well. And I know for a lot of people at the consumer level, they're using Copilot on a personal basis. So in some cases, that can make it easier for organizations that want to deploy AI, in that employees oftentimes are using Copilot outside the workplace, and it can make it easier for them to adapt to using Copilot in the workplace as well. So one of the biggest strengths is this ability of D365 to not be constrained by what it does out of the box on its own, but its ability to integrate with all these different tools and applications that Microsoft has spent so much time and money investing in and developing over the years. When we compare Microsoft Dynamics 365 to other ERP solutions in the marketplace, we find that it's generally more flexible than a lot of the systems out there, especially when you compare it to something like a SAP S/4HANA or Oracle NetSuite or even a Workday type of product that's SaaS, multi-tenant, and relatively inflexible. Microsoft is very flexible. And the reason for this is because they offer Power Apps for you to create different applications and extensions of the product, but also because they have ISVs or third-party independent solution providers that take the base D365 product and they mold it or conform it or develop it into something specific to a specific industry, or they build a certain capability on it. So in addition to having flexibility with the tool itself, you also have the ability to go find a variation of the tool D365 that best fits your industry or the function, and you could do that through third-party providers that have developed these extensions or these variations of D365. Microsoft also has a low-code, no-code sort of development environment, which makes it easier for semi-techie types to be able to develop variations of the product. But one thing I will say is, despite the fact that the flexibility is a strength, it can also be a weakness. For a lot of organizations, this is actually a liability to be able to do all this different stuff and have all these different variations of a core product, because first of all, it means that it makes it easier to resist change. It's a lot easier to take Microsoft and have it conform to the way you've always done things rather than driving a sort of standardization or a new way of thinking around how your business processes work. Now, you can work around this by ensuring you have the right process governance in place and the overall program governance in place. But generally speaking, just because you can change the software doesn't mean you should. And that's one of the traps that many Microsoft customers fall into. Secondly, and I'll come back to this point in a moment, when you have an ecosystem that's as big as Microsoft's, where you have different third-party providers and ISVs that are developing different variations of the product, it creates a sort of fragmentation where you could be buying the D365 product, but now you're locked into one specific ISV or solution provider because they're the only ones that know how that software works. They built it, they own the IP, and you're dependent on them versus the broader Microsoft community. So that's some of the advantage and disadvantage as it relates to flexibility, but I'd say flexibility is one of the key operative terms in describing Microsoft D365, whether that's for better or for worse for your organization. Now let's talk about user adoption and the impact to your IT department as it relates to Microsoft D365. As it relates to user adoption, it can oftentimes be easier for end users or employees to learn the Microsoft D365 product because it has that Microsoft look and feel. So if you're already a Microsoft shop, you're using Microsoft Office and you're using SharePoint and Copilot, Microsoft Teams, all these different Microsoft apps, it's going to be a bit more natural feeling to your employees in terms of how to use that software, especially if you compare it to something outside the Microsoft ecosystem that looks entirely different, has a completely different user interface. However, it can actually add a bit more pressure to your IT department. So it could make things easier for your end users, but it might make things a bit more difficult or give your IT department more to manage because of some of the other things I've mentioned throughout this video so far. If I change the software, or if I integrate with different applications, or if I use Power Apps to create extensions or customization to the software, or if I go buy a certain variation of D365 from an ISV, that actually puts more pressure on the IT department to manage that technical complexity and risk. It may be that that risk and that cost and that impact to IT is not nearly as important as the positive impact it might have on your end employees, but it is something to be aware of. For many organizations, if you're not already a Microsoft Dynamics shop, you'll have to retool your IT staff to support Microsoft in that relatively complex ecosystem. So end user adoption and impact to IT are two other things you should consider. They're both a positive and a negative for Microsoft D365. One of the advantages of Microsoft's ecosystem as it relates to D365 is that there are so many different value-added resellers, independent solution providers, and others supporting the product. You have a lot of different options as it relates to buying and implementing D365. However, this isn't necessarily a good thing. In the case of Microsoft, they've taken a bit of a laissez-faire approach to managing their implementation partner ecosystem when you compare it to, say, Oracle Fusion or SAP S/4HANA or even Oracle NetSuite or some of the other products in the marketplace. D365 has taken a hands-off approach, meaning that there's a lot of variation in the quality of implementation partners out there. It's highly fragmented. There's a lot of small mom-and-pop shops supporting D365 implementations, and in many cases, you're bound to that independent solution vendor that has developed a certain variation of D365. You might be sort of locked in to that ISV and have limited options because they're the ones that own the IP in the way that version of D365 might have been built for a certain industry or function. So that's something to be aware of, is that highly fragmented implementation partner ecosystem is troubling for many organizations. And you add to the fact that when you compare the D365 ecosystem to other implementation partners of other products like SAP and Oracle Fusion, for example, you find that the Microsoft community tends to be, as a general stereotype, they tend to be more techie focused. They tend to be more focused on the Microsoft tools itself, which is okay, but it leaves a lot of gaps and deficiencies in the way that the product typically gets implemented. Typically, Microsoft partners are not as good at addressing organizational change, program governance, addressing business process improvements, addressing integration with other systems. And most vendors do struggle with this. Most implementation partners with other vendors struggle with this as well, but I'd say it's even more true in the Microsoft Dynamics partner community. So that's something to be aware of as well as you navigate your potential D365 implementation. So this all begs the question of, where is Microsoft D365 the best fit, And is it a best fit for you? Well, first of all, the first criteria that would suggest it might be a good fit for you is if you're already a Microsoft shop. If you're heavily invested in Microsoft Office, if you've invested heavily in a legacy Microsoft ERP system like Navision or Exapta or Great Plains, it may be that D365 is a natural step in your digital journey. Additionally, if you have relatively high technical sophistication internally, you have a relatively robust IT staff that can manage the complexities of a Microsoft ecosystem and a Microsoft offering, then it may be a good fit. If you don't have that, it can be challenging, and it may be that you have to beef up or staff up your IT department to be able to support that environment. If flexibility is important to your organization, it may be that D365 is a great fit for you. If you're trying to drive standardization and a common set of business processes, and you're actually looking for a relative amount of rigidity or consistency across your operations, Microsoft may not be the good fit. You may be better off looking at SAP S/4HANA, Oracle NetSuite, Oracle Fusion, one of the other more standardized solutions in the marketplace. But if you're an organization that changes quickly, it's very flexible as an organization, and you're looking for flexible tools to support you, D365 can be a good fit. And then just building on that flexibility point to leave you with one more thought as it relates to this, that is, if you are an organization that has pretty unique business operations, or you have a unique secret sauce that not many, if anyone else, has in the marketplace, it may be that D365 is a good fit, not only because the product itself is flexible, but because you also have access to Power Apps and other types of solutions that can extend and build on the capabilities of D365 in a way that's unique to you. So that could be a situation where D365 is a good fit as well. So that video gave an overview of my thoughts on the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses of Microsoft D365. What were some of your thoughts or questions from that video, Darian?
Yeah, I think what stood out to me the most was how you made the point of Microsoft Dynamics 365 biggest strength is its ecosystem and not really just the core ERP alone. And with that, one question I have from that, Eric, is at what point does the ecosystem strength outweigh weakness in core ERP itself?
Well, that's a good question. I think core ERP could be fairly strong for a lot of organizations, but it may be not a great fit for a lot of organizations as well. You know, and it's not that you look at D365, it's not that if you took the vanilla D365 solution, it's not a bad solution, but you're probably going to have 10 to 20% gap in what it is you really need to run your business versus what the software can do out of the box. And that's true for most software vendors. It's going to be like, if you can get 80% of the way there with what you need, that's actually really good. But the problem is that 10 to 20% that it doesn't do. And when I say it doesn't do it, I'm not saying it doesn't do it the way we want it to. It looks different. The screen looks different. It's uncomfortable. It's going to take us a while to learn. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it fundamentally doesn't do what we need to do to run our business. If we're a complex engineered order manufacturer with a super complex supply chain and warehouse management, and D365 can't do those things, it might do 80% of everything else we need. But if it can't do those things, that could be a showstopper. That could be a problem. So that's where you look to the ecosystem and say, well, maybe there are third-party ISVs or third-party technology providers that have built some sort of functionality on the D365 platform that we could take advantage of it. So in other words, we're not buying an entirely different system, but we're also not custom developing our own system. We're taking advantage of a third-party system that was built on that same platform and integrates better with the core system. So I think it provides a nice balance between one system trying to be everything to everyone versus not wanting to go down the path necessarily of having a million different systems doing different things within your business. So it gives you a best of both worlds scenario where you could get third-party apps that are built in that ecosystem. So to answer your question, I think it's that last mile, that last 10 to 20% of functionality that the ecosystem can be very helpful in solving.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Another one of the points that you made that stood out to me was how flexibility for them is both an advantage and a liability. And with flexibility being both a pro and a con, what's the earliest sign that an organization is abusing that flexibility instead of using it strategically?
I think the minute that you start saying yes to everything and the technical people start saying yes to everything because they can, I mean, with a tool set like Microsoft, you could say yes, you can customize, you can integrate, you could add Power Apps, you could do all these different things. from a technological perspective to bring a lot of power and capability to your processes. It doesn't mean you should, though. A lot of times, it's easy to overcomplicate things because you can, and just because you have technical people that are smart enough to figure it out, it could create so much business complexity that it's actually not worth doing. So the minute you realize that you don't have governance in place around decision making, the minute you realize you're not very selective about when you deviate from the standard software the way it was built, that's usually the first sign that there's something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Super interesting on that side of things with Microsoft for sure. And last question I have here today is, how should CIOs balance the ease of user adoption against long-term architectural complexity?
Good question. I mean, it's another philosophical debate. I mean, what's more important? Are you trying to, as an organization, are you trying to provide the best employee experience and make things easy for your employees, or as easy as possible? That's going to lead you down a path of potentially more customization, maybe more one-off best of breed solutions, just because it fits better with what your employees might need. Or if your strategy and your priority is more to focus on standardization and common processes and driving down efficiency, increasing scale, and even if that means that it might be uncomfortable or less than ideal for your employees, then that's where you say, we're probably not going to customize as much. We're probably going to be more inclined to go towards a standard vanilla monolithic ERP system. And we're going to be super diligent about not changing the way that software was meant to work. And so it's easy to pick one of those sides of the debate and just be a purist about it. But at the end of the day, you have to be objective and look at, either side kind of sucks. I mean, there's pros and cons to either side. There's no ideal solution. You can talk about, clean core, standard processes, best practices, all you want, but that's not reality. That's just marketing spin and marketing fluff. So you've got to look at what makes sense for your business. If you need to change the technology in a way that creates a little bit more complexity and technological risk, that might be okay. It might be that that's a lower risk than the business risk that might be imposed by trying to force fit a standard solution in ways it just doesn't work. And we see a lot of companies that are doing the latter right now. They're trying to force fit a standard cloud solution into their operations, and the vendors just sort of stand back and say, well, we've got best practice. We're not the problem. You're the problem if you're not willing to change. And you look at some of these fundamental gaps in the way the software was built and the way the business needs to work. These aren't just change management issues. These are fundamental problems with the way the software works. And no software is going to be perfect, but where I have a problem is when vendors stand back and blame the customers for the fact that their software doesn't do what they need it to do. So I think you just have to know how to navigate that reality of the enterprise tech space.
Yeah, absolutely. You made some great points on that for sure.
Yeah, good conversation. I appreciate those good questions. And I'd love to hear from you if you've used Microsoft Dynamics. Love to hear your feedback in the comments below. And of course, going back to our conversation earlier about AI and ERP, I'd love to hear if you're actually using AI capabilities. Love to hear your comments or feedback in the chat below. So thank you all for joining. Thanks for another great episode, Darian. Thank you to our entire panel discussion, our entire panel of experts that joined us earlier in this episode. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Hope you all have a great week in the meantime. As always, if you'd like to learn more about how our company, Third Stage Consulting, can help you from a tech-agnostic client-side perspective to make your project more successful and avoid some of the failure traps that most organizations fall into, please feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. So you all have a great day, and we will see you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Take care.
Ground control is the name of the song.